Good evening, folks, and welcome to episode 3 of The Lowland. I am your humble host, Nat, and after the exciting news that we were half prepared for, the release of Fizzband's Treasury of Dragons, I thought it made quite a lot of sense to sidestep and crisscross away from the D&D cosmology and take a look at the biggest D in D&D, dragons. Now, I'm sure you're screaming at your screen immediately, "Oh, obviously I know what dragons are, Nat, I ain't thick." I know you're not thick, hun, but what you gotta remember, in Dungeons & Dragons, there's not just one type of dragon, there's actually loads. You have chromatic dragons, metallic dragons, and all sorts of other lesser dragons and dragonkin in between. And now, for the first time ever in 5th edition, Fizzband the Fabulous, fantastic name by the way, has the pleasure of introducing gem dragons, blang blang. There's obviously going to be a lot to unpack here, so I thought it made a lot of sense to split these videos up into manageable bite-sized chunks. But before I do that, I'm going to have to take on the form of somebody trying to charge you money to take photos of the Tower of Pisa, hit you with some barely comprehensible trivia, so that we can break the question down and ask, what the f*** are metallic dragons? Metallic dragons, as the name suggests, are typically distinguished by the metallic scales, and they're normally good aligned creatures, and more often than not, followers of the lawful good platinum dragon god Bahamut. They typically appear in adventures as powerful allies or generally friendly NPCs and range in goodness from super jobsworths to a little bit more chaotic and funky. But one thing they all have in common is their ability to polymorph, and many will polymorph into humanoids while others into smaller or larger creatures. The first of the 5 metallic dragons we're going to look at today are the brass dragons. These flying trumpets make their lairs in hot, arid deserts, in canyons and caves, and they have this huge protective plate that runs from the top of its head. They've got these wonderful frills that run down its neck, and much like the bodybuilder Kai Green, have wings that run the entire length of its body right to the tip of its tail. Brass dragons have a fire breath weapon and a secondary sleep breath weapon, a chloroform breath, but they are the weakest of the metallic dragons, and they prefer using the gift of the gab as opposed to physical violence. This preference for talking, however, runs much deeper because brass dragons love conversation. They'll do whatever it takes to chat up as many creatures and get as much information as dragoningly possible. They will even go so far as to use their chloroform breath to send you to sleep, trap you in their caves, in their caverns, or even bury you up to your neck in sand until you give them some kind of meaningful conversation. Now, this sounds like the actions of an evil dragon, and admittedly, I can't think of a real-world scenario where this wouldn't make you seem like a complete and utter psychopath, so, as you would imagine, they're considered chaotic good. As with all dragons, brass dragons love to hoard treasure, and they especially love magic items that helps them squeeze out a little bit more of that talky talk, such as a genie in a lamp, but they are willing to part with some of those magic items should you be able to satiate their need for conversation. This dragon's a creep. Ugh. Bronze dragons are the surfer dudes of the metallic dragons, and they make their lairs on coastal areas, and they'll sometimes make those lairs in wrecked ships at the bottom of the sea. They'll decorate them with beautiful corals and pearls and with all the other treasure that they find in their adventures. These bad boys have a lightning breath, but they also have a secondary repulsion breath, which I can only assume means their breath stinks. They have this beautiful crest that comes out of the side of their head with spikes on, and further spikes that come out of his chin, which I can only assume is stylized after yours truly. They have webbed feet and smoothed scales, and because they spend so much time underwater, this helps them swim faster. Bronze dragons are fascinated by the ships in the sea, and they'll sit on the coast or sit on the dock of the bay like Otis Redding, and they'll watch the ships roll in and watch them roll away again. They'll often take the form of inconspicuous creatures such as gulls or little fishies just to go and take a closer look at the ship, but they'll also take the form of creatures with feet and go aboard the ships, sometimes trying to bargain with the captain in order to get some of that sweet, sweet loot. Bronze dragons are also obsessed with warfare and fighting the good fight against tyranny, and will go out of their way to help armies that are fighting for good, but they often require a payment of some sort typical. If the good guys can't afford material wealth, they'll sometimes accept ceremonial gifts that commemorate the alliance, or even historical books pertaining to warfare or strategic combat. Next up, we've got the coolest of all the metallic dragons, the silver dragons. And I don't say that because their chin is strapped up like the suavest half of Nearly Nerds. I say that because they have a mohawk, and if 90s cartoons have taught me anything, it's the mohawks equal cool. Silver dragons use a cold breath weapon, and they have a secondary paralyzing breath weapon, which kind of goes hand in hand with being cold as They make their lairs way above the clouds in mountain peaks, and they especially love long-lost civilizations, abandoned outposts, or even old mountainside cities. This is because silver dragons love people, and they will polymorph into humanoids and spend entire lives amongst the common folk, being tennis coaches or software developers, building strong relationships and bonds during this pseudo-life. And they especially love humans because of their short lifespan and their zest for life. Zest for life? They met us. Silver dragons do enjoy the company of other silver dragons, and they will tend to personal affairs or get jiggy, but because of their extended lifespan, when they return to their humanoid lives, sometimes they find that the relationships and the people that they've fallen in love with have been gone for multiple generations. Out of all the metallic dragons, silver dragons are probably the most morally good and will do whatever it takes to help out those in need. They will sometimes even put morality above the law. And of course, their love for humanity translates into their treasure. They will keep history books, art, even the remains of long-lost civilizations and empires. Now, copper dragons are physically the most dragony looking of all the metallic dragons. Imagine a dragon, imagine a penny, mix them together, boom, you've got yourself a copper dragon. These dudes, dudettes, and dudexes make their lairs in dry uplands and hilltops, and they will even build secret tunnels and entrances within their caves to hide their most precious treasure, and they will put out all the worthless junk in the easy to see bits to ward off would-be adventurers. They have an acid breath and a secondary slow-in breath, which canonically and officially looks exactly like this. Slow. Copper dragons are the Riddlers, Jokers, pranksters, and all the other Batman's rogue gallery villains of the metallic dragons, and despite their gregarious nature, they can get quite aggro if you start rummaging around in their treasure, especially the really precious stuff. Copper dragons love good jokes and riddles, and they have plenty in their repertoire, and they will actually get a little bit pissed at you if you don't play along, and this is why they love bards. They will even carve out little abodes in their cave to temporarily house bards should they want to regale them with stories, songs, or even jokes and riddles themselves. So it's always good to have a joke or a riddle to hand. In fact, here's one on the house. I always give my wife tea in bed, but is she grateful? No. She always says, I'd rather it in a mug. You could also pull the really realistic and thought-provoking gold digger and flashy car prank. Copper dragons are the most covetous of their possessions of all the metallic dragons and will go a very long way to stop people getting their hands on them. They will even go so far as to send adventurers on fake quests for these items, knowing full well those items are in their cave. You guys. Last but not least, we have numero unos, the Phelpses and the Bolts, gold dragons. Now, gold dragons are the most majestic and powerful of all the metallic dragons, and they have long tendrils like a beard that run down their face. And if you've ever seen a fantasy movie, you know this means they're super smart, and while I jest, they are revered as the wisest of all the dragons. Gold dragons also have long rippled wings, not too dissimilar to a brass dragon, and when they fly, the wings ripple in the air like they're swimming, and that really solidifies my Michael Phelps reference from just now. They make their lairs in difficult to find locations to avoid arousing suspicion or generating feelings of fear, so you'll find them in mist-shrouded islands or behind beautifully landscaped waterfalls. Like brass dragons, gold dragons also have a fire breath, and they have a secondary weakening breath, which I have no joke or cutaway gag for. Maybe it dehydrates you? These lot are probably the most aloof and least social of all the metallic dragons, and whilst they are very well respected, they are pretty grim in their personality. This is because they spend a lot of time plotting and scheming ways to eradicate and exterminate evil. They'll spend most of their time alone, but will meet up with other gold dragons for that sexy loving time, or with other humanoids or other creatures, bolstering alliances to really root out injustice. Gold dragons, like all metallic dragons, do polymorph, and they'll polymorph into humanoids, spending time in towns and cities, never revealing their true nature, and they'll not normally really help out the little guy either, much like you would find a silver dragon doing. Gold dragons' goals are the complete eradication and extermination of evildoers, injustice, and corruption in the world. Gold dragons can pretty much eat anything, but their diet consists of a lot of precious gems and stones, and anything they don't eat will be protected by powerful magical wards. So if you were thinking of stealing any, you're probably going to have a bad time. But what this does mean is consumable treasure as gifts will be very well received by gold dragons, and it's a good idea to have some on hand if you need a gold dragon as a powerful ally. That about covers the bare necessities, simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife. I mean those bare... Sorry. But I think we will leave it there for metallic dragons. I'm either going to bore you to death or potentially have you fiending for more. But in any case, I thank you for joining me. I bid you adieu, and I remind you to join me next week in the Lore Lounge. If you like where this series is going and you want to see more, do us a favor, son. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and you'll be doing me and Jimbo a really big favor. Thanks.